Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back into my channel. So in this lecture and lab, we're going to configure VTP and DTP. So this is the CCNP Encor PDF book straight from Cisco. So if you look at here, it says that the fundamental topic here is VLAN trunking protocol. So before API were available on Cisco platforms, configuring the switch was a manual process, so Cisco created a proprietary protocol, VLAN trunking protocol, which is VTP, to reduce the burden of provisioning VLANs on switches. Adding a VLAN might seem like a simple task, but in an environment with 100 switches, adding a VLAN requires logging into 100 switches to provision one VLAN. Thanks to VTP, switches that participate in the same VTP domain can have a VLAN created once on a VTP server and propagate to other VLAN client switches in the same VTP domain. So the firewall on the VTP architecture, so the server, it says the server switch is responsible for the creation, modification, and deletion of the VTP within the VTP domain. The client switch receives the VTP advertisement and modify the modify the VLANs on that switch. A VLAN cannot be created locally on a VTP client. The third role is transparent. So VTP transparent switches receive and forward VTP advertisement, but do not modify the local VLAN database. VLAN are configured only locally. And the fourth role is off. A switch does not participate in VTP advertisement and does not forward them out of any ports, either VLANs or configured only locally. Now you can see here, these are the architecture, some VTPs, they go the server, the switch here is the server, and those here is the client. So you see this one is transparent. So it says in the simple topology, there are three version VTP. So you see there's VTP communication. So if you're interested, I'm going to post a link of this PDF book for free. So if you want, you could give a donation, but if not, then you could, just have it for free and be able to observe and look into this and see different things on how to configure and what are the concept of VTP. So it's easier to go ahead and just pull a packet tracer and start doing commands and configure VTP, but it's better to have a depth understanding of what VTP is and versus DTP. That way, when someone speaks, you would know what are they talking about. So let's just pull up this little Word document here that I prepared in this lecture. So it says that the difference between VTP and DTP. So now the first question is, what is the default running protocol on switches, DTP or VTP? So the answer is both. What are these both do? So DTP tries to make sure that on a link that interconnect two switches, both ports operate in the same mode, either access or trunk. In other words, DTP allows two connected switches to negotiate the operating mode on a link, either on an access link or trunk. Now, VTP is responsible for synchronizing the VLAN database across multiple switches. When you create, rename, delete a VLAN or change its state, active or suspended on a single switch, VTP will propagate this change across all switches in a VTP domain. This way, the management of VLANs on a network with multiple switches is greatly simplified. You make a change to the VLAN database on a single switch, and all switches will learn about the change. So in other words, VTP tries to make sure that all switches in a VTP domain have an identical VLAN database propagates any change to it. When we say DTP has some modes, so the modes are on, off, desirable, auto, and negotiate. And when we say individual switch port has some modes, the modes are trunk, access, dynamic, desirable, dynamic, auto, and no negotiate. So what does it mean? Let's say with the switch port, a switch port can either belong to a single VLAN only, and it can be a link that carries data in many VLANs at the same time. If the port belongs to a single VLAN, we call it an access port. If the port belongs to multiple VLANs simultaneously, we can call it trunk. So switch port mode can either access or trunk. When there are no others, access port are usually used to connect individual end device to the network, such as a PC, network printer, webcam, or whatever, tablets, or a laptop, whatever. So choke port are used to interconnect switches because then the VLAN on both these switches can be made contiguous at access port in the same VLAN across multiple switches can communicate together as if they were on a single switch. So now trunk port must use frame tagging to distinguish the VLAN frame and belongs into. When a frame is sent out, a trunk port, it receives a tag that says which VLAN does its frame belongs into. So the receiving trunk port will analyze this tag, remove it, and forward it to the framing the appropriate VLAN. So access port do not use tags because they are not need them. The configuration of a trunk port says which single VLAN it belongs into. So guys, if you look here, so it says the switch port mode, either access or trunk, is also called the operating mode of a port. So DTP mode tells the port whether it's capable of negotiating the operating mode with the neighboring port via DTP, if so, what is the preferred operating mode of that port DTP mode or translated into operating mode of port. Now, if you want to, you could stop this video and look at different notes that we prepare here for you. So that's just to make you understand DTP and VTP. So here it says take of it this way. If you want to automatically set up trunk and interfaces on a switch, when the other side is requesting a trunk, you turn to DTP, which is dynamic trunking protocol. Using the right setting, you'll be able to automatically set an interface to trunk mode. It is connected to another switch. So VTP, let's say that you have multiple VLANs that you need to create in your network, but you don't want to bother doing to every single switch and creating these VLANs. So you can turn on the VTP, you configure the right settings, and you just create the VLANs on one switch, and the VTP also propagates these VLANs to other switches that are set to a client mode. Now, guys, so it says this is VTP. I prepared this slide here. So the VTP versus DTP. So it says following this, a table of difference between VTP and DTP. So VTP stands for VLAN trunking protocol. DTP stands for dynamic trunking protocol. VTP is a protocol that used to share VLAN information within a domain among connected switches. DTP is DTP is protocol used to negotiate trunking between switch port on either end of a link. So VTP is responsible for synchronizing the VLAN database across multiple switches. DTP tries to make sure that a link that interconnect two switches both ports operates in the same mode, either access or trunk. So VTP tries to make sure that all switches in a VTP domain have an identical VLAN database and propagates any change to it. DTP allows two interconnect switches to negotiate the operating mode of a link. Last but not least, VTP requires a trunk, ISL or .1Q in order to send VTP frames. DTP is not require a form of trunk. You can manually establish a trunk with switch port mode trunk and switch port negotiate. Is configured on a trunk interfaces. So now let's go ahead and pull up Packet Tracer and start our configuration with VTP and DTP. See if we can make this a little bit bigger. And Paul. So, okay, I think we have a better view here. So now let's start. First thing first, this says here, configure VTP and DTP. They go to devices, the interfaces, and the IP address subnet mask. So it says configure and verify VTP and DTP. So the background scenario says first and foremost, configure and verify DTP. Verify and use different things. So let's go ahead and pull up Packet Tracer. Not Packet Tracer, but the command prompt and start making our configuration as we was told on this lab. Let's make this a little bit bigger so everybody can see. Okay, so let's go to add. Oops. Typo. I apologize for that. It's gonna take a while before this can come back. Okay, so while we're waiting on this, let's go ahead and start. So VTP, VLAN trunking protocol, is a protocol which used to share VLAN information within a domain among connected switches. It is a Cisco proprietary protocol that propagates a system of virtual local area network VLAN. On the world local area network, VTP carries VLAN information to all the switches in the domain. For example, suppose you have multiple VLANs that you need to create in your network, but you do not want to go to a single switch and create these VLANs. So you could turn to VTP. You just create the VLANs on one switch and you configure the right settings. VTP also propagate these VLANs for the switches that are client. So, and now DTP, which is Dynamic Trunking Protocol, is a proprietary networking protocol developed by Cisco system for the purpose of negotiating trunking of a link between two VLANs aware switches and for negotiating the type of trunking encapsulation to be used. Trunk negotiation or managed by DTP only if the port is directly connected for each or on each other. So let's go ahead and see if we get access to this now. Okay, guys, so first things first is conf the, and now what we got to do is to go to interface gigabit 01, right? And then switch port mode dynamic is servable. So let's go ahead and make all the configuration we've been told on switch 1. Then we could go on switch 2 and switch 3. So on switch 1, we'll be configure the VTP, I mean, will be configured as the VTP server. So it says VTP mode, let's X out. VTP mode, server. Then we could make this what? VTP domain. It's called the CCNP. Says VTP password, called the CCNP. And then we could do what? VLAN 10 name. Let's call this red. And then we call VLAN 20 name red, right? Say VLAN 30 name yellow. So we could say exit one and says at gigabit 10.01. We could say switch port mode dynamic desirable, right? And we could say switch port or switch port chunk. Say switch port chunk native VLAN 999. And what do we do? Let's say switch port mode chunk. It says interface. Let's exit out one. It says at gig 0/2. And we could say switch port mode chunk. And then we could go to switch port chunk. So switch port chunk native VLAN 999. Let's go ahead and run this. Now, if we do show VTP status, we see the VTP server. It have a domain name CCNP. As we did, we say show VTP password. So the password of VTP CCNP, if we say show VLAN beyond, so we have 3 VLANs. I mean, we have some of the VLANs by default, but the 3 VLANs that we configure are these 3 ones here. As we know, there's some VLANs that's already here by default. So far it was 4. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start doing the same configuration. Configure switch 2 and switch 3 as client on the VTP domain. So let's go this here. Okay. Export this, switch 2. Let's go to CLI. Let's make this. Second. So now it's down. Now let's go ahead and do so and conf d. Let's stay VTP mode client VTP mode. Okay, so it's VTP mode client that we could call VTP domain CCNP. Let's make this VTP password CCNP. Then we could do at give fast. Sorry, so fast Ethernet. It says gigabit Ethernet 0/1. See if we have that. 0/1. Let's say switch port mode, switch port mode, dynamic, desirable. And let's say switch port chunk, port mode, switch port chunk native VLAN, so switch port chunk native VLAN 199. Then we do interface. I would say interface. Then we say first gigabit 0/2. You could do what? Switch port mode chunk. Then we do switch port. See something? Do switch port chunk. The switch port native switch port chunk native VLAN. And now we could do exit interface fast Ethernet, say 0/1 to 8. Range switch port mode access. Then we do what? Switch port mode access. Switch port access. VLAN 10. Let's go ahead and just do about for the rest of the configuration. We'll make this 9 to 16. Right. And switch port mode access. Switch port mode access. VLAN 20. It's just about for this for the other one. Let's make this 17 to 24. 24. Switch port mode access. And then switch port mode access VLAN 30. Then what do we have else? This is pretty much it. There's that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and make this. It's called the same configuration for VLAN. I mean, on switch 3. Let's go ahead and do enable conf t. We're gonna go fast. It says VTP mode, client, VTP domain, CCNP. We could do VTP password, CCNP. Let's do up our VTP password, CCNP. Then we could do what? Interface gigabit 0/1. Could do switch port mode dynamic desirable. So dynamic desirable. And we could do switch port mode, switch port chunk, native, VLAN 999. Could do interface. See if we could do up our and got the interface. Okay, sorry, right there. 02. See if we have it. 02. We do up our switch port mode chunk. So this one here is switch port mode chunk. Up. Mode chunk. Then switch port mode VLAN. This VLAN. Then mode chunk. And then we could do what? Set out one and says interface, fast Ethernet 0/1. What do we have for this? Switch port mode access. Then we could do switch port mode, switch port access VLAN. I mean, switch port access. Yep. Switch port access VLAN. So, no, ratio, fast Ethernet. Oh, let's go back here. Let's pull this. So with this, we have to make the range 1 to 8. I don't go too fast. Make no mistake. So range up. And now we could say switch port mode access. And we could say switch port mode access. Switch port mode access VLAN 10. Switch port access, I mean not mode. Smooth the mode. Switch port access VLAN 10. Now let's go ahead and up our and make this real quick. So I'm gonna start from 9 to 16. So switch port access, switch port mode access, and then we could say switch port mode VLAN 20. Let's go ahead and make those configuration. It says 16, 24, and from 17 to 24, I mean. Switch port mode access and switch port mode VLAN 30. So we have done. So now if we do say show VLAN DR. So we have all the VLANs configured, so we're good. And the ports assigned to them. So if we say show VTP startup, VTP status, so you see this on this here is client. Say if we say show VTP password, we give it is CCNA, CCNP. So we go, let's try that on the second route and on the second switch. If everything works okay, then we're done with this lab configuration for today. Let's go ahead and say show VLAN BR. So we good. Okay, so now go all the configuration. So let's go and say show VTP status. So this is his client, the domain name. So if we say show VTP password, and the VTP password is CCNP as we did. So let's go ahead and see, since we configure this as the server for the VTP, it says and conf up and show VLAN BR. So we have everything. So we have everything, right? So we good. And if we say show VTP status, so this is the server for the VTP, right? We have that. So which one is the server? If we say show VTP password, so the password is CCNP. So guys, so pretty much we have done this. As we said that the lab objective part one was to configure and verify VTP and DTP. So we done that and we verify everything. So it says in part one, you will configure the chunk, connect among the switches, verify the VLANs and all. So it's in the second step where it says dynamic trunking. So guys, thank you so very much for following along. So stay tuned for another lecture and lab configuration for the CCNP Encor exam. Appreciate you guys was following along. Stay tuned for another one. Thank you. Bye-bye.